right, what's up, friends? This is Jerry Auger. This is kind of an impromptu, first things first deep dive. We are going to be going deep in the next 30 minutes on the Okta breach, on LAPSUS as a threat actor group, kind of talking about what happened, a little bit of the history, what is the impact from this Okta attack, and what should you know about it? Like as a practitioner or going to work today, what should you know if the CEO comes and talks to you and says, "Are we screwed? Should we pull out of Okta?" You should be able to at least have a better informed conversation. I'm super excited. I'm being joined by Eric Taylor. You guys know Eric from Barricade Cyber. He was generous enough to host the First Things First broadcast on Monday this week. So thank you, Eric, for that. So I guess we don't have any really fixed form for how this is going to go. So it's definitely going to be social. We'll be doing some providing information ourselves and then engaging chat as appropriate. Okay. So if that's good for you, Eric, I think we should dive in. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So just feeding on Carrie, I know that you said you're not going without coffee. I got some big cups of coffee going on right now. So, but anyway,
Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess first let's before we talk about the Okta breach,
yeah.
let's talk about because it's attributed to LAPSUS at this point.
Mhm.
There's no question that LAPSUS as a threat actor group did it. So I want to spend a minute talking about LAPSUS because I think it's important to understand the psyche of this threat actor group before we get into Okta as like a identity and access management solution.
Yeah. So
So
we
go
go ahead.
ahead. Yeah, please, Eric.
So we want to start off with a big asterisk because a lot of this stuff, as we always say, especially with anything in the news, it's always fast and loose. And, within a couple weeks or whatever, we may actually know more information that completely contradicts what we know today. So with that, check back. I'm sure, first things first, we'll be providing more updates. I'll be providing more updates. But yeah, right now it does look like the group of LAPSUS is from South America, I do believe, in
Yep.
Brazil. They are not what appears to be a ransomware as a service. They seem to have, their own internal team doing some things. They do have a very unique operating measurement. They are not a true ransomware group like you would with DarkSide Manor or Lockbit or any of the other major ransomware groups that are out there. They definitely operate on a different mentality. They are more of, we're going to take a look at your information, and they are using the insider threat model,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they are actively recruiting and paying people who are inside of your organization to give up creds, even using SIM hijacking to take over for SMS based 2FAs. And that's how they're getting into these networks. So they're paying off people who are potentially not very happy inside of your organization to get and persist in that access. And it does look like one of the major persistent measurements that they are using, at least as of right now, is AnyDes. So if you are not looking into your internal environment, looking for potentially connections coming into from outside outside the US, if you're US based or whatever country you're in, if you're in England and you're starting to see a bunch of stuff coming from, Germany, it might be a little suspicious, right? So you definitely want to start looking at that, making sure that any remote access that's inside of your network, typically being controlled by application control inside of your firewall. And that's cool. Picture in picture.
Yeah, I'll get
Do
that
my fat
sorted
man
out in a
dance.
second.
No,
I'll
I'm
get
just
that
doing my
sorted
fat
out.
man dance. But anyway,
Hold on.
so,
Yep.
but yeah, it's definitely, they definitely have a different mindset of what they're doing, right? So we've seen this tactic before with a company called Marketo or Marketo. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure exactly how to pronounce them, but they were definitely an extortion site. I don't think they actually used insider threats in their particular model, but they were definitely, hey, look, we got all your data, and we're going to start selling it. It's really an interesting model because, when you go into this type of threat landscape, you are like, okay, what is? It's got to be, there's got to be some sort of something driving it. Right now, the Bitcoin address, and I'm not going to post that because I just don't really know, legalities of some of these things, but their Bitcoin address has received over $1 million in quote unquote donations. Now, I'm not sure if that's because of people who are in and buying this information, because some of the information has been sold, and I don't want to get too far off track because I'm sure we'll dive into that in a moment. That's some late breaking stuff that was happening as of this morning. But they've got to have an end game. When they went into NVIDIA, it's like, okay, what is their actual end game? And it was led to believe it was for the mining purposes. People are doing the Bitcoin and Ethereum and Monero mining, even though Monero's CPU, not GPU based, but it was to improve and unlock the mining capabilities. So they thought maybe going open source would unlock it. And that was, their essential thing. But they have, according to their Telegram feed, they've got 3 or 4 more companies in the pipeline to be leaked. So they're very active. I don't know what they're paying off or whatever, but these are definitely an interesting group to keep an eye on because they are, like you said, they're making some waves.
Yeah, it's really amazing how fast they're moving and how big the targets are that they're taking down, right? I mean, I feel like we hear about a threat actor group, like DarkSide or Conti or one of these larger ransomware threat actors, where they'll hit one big target and like that's how they make their name, and then you might hear a couple small targets here and there, but like you said before, LAPSUS is hitting Okta, which we're going to get into, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Samsung, and it's believed, again, like you mentioned, that they're out of Brazil, right? Allegedly, and because of their initial 2 targets were the Brazilian Ministry of Health, where they pulled all of the health information records down, and then another major Brazilian government player got hit, and then in Portugal, the third target, the first time they reached out of Brazil, was a Portuguese large company, Empresa, which is a communications company, from my understanding. And
Yep.
Portugal and Brazil have this Portuguese-Spanish language, right? So it's a very similar language, and you can see their ransomware notes are actually in that Portuguese Spanish language. And just to kind of also provide this for people, you can see here, this is this request where LAPSUS is reaching out and basically calling it a job. I know it's hard to see here. Let me do full screen really quickly. They're calling it a job where, oh God, that's still tough to see, huh? If you want to come work for them, all you need to do is give them access. We're not looking for data. We're looking for the employee to provide us a VPN or Citrix into the network. No big deal. And they'll pay well, right? So
make note of that, or some AnyDesk, and that's the remote access or a RAT tool, right? So
yeah. Yes. So, okay. So LAPSUS is definitely moving quickly. They, as far as I can tell, Eric, they are financially motivated, right? You talked about that Bitcoin address taking in $1 million, which, considering all the targets they've taken down, seems kind of like small potatoes, honestly. Like $1 million would change my life. But when you're taking out NVIDIA, Samsung, like $1 million kind of seems like chump change, honestly.
Exactly. So, granted, they're going to be taking in a lot of Bitcoin, but you also got to remember, it is I hate to say it, but these ransomware and threat actors consider anybody they breached this is going to get spicy, but so an effing client. How about that? So we'll keep it, PG-13 as much as I can. There we go. But they consider you a client of theirs, which I think is very far stretched. I'm like, no, we're not a client. You illegally access our information because of whatever, RDP, aka ransomware deployment protocol, or insider threats, or whatever the case is. So it's very interesting what they're doing. So they've got to pay the insider threats as well. So it is a revolving door. From what I did look at the Bitcoin address, the one that's being publicized is only inbound. It's not bilateral, so they're not sending so they've got some sort of other funding going on to actually pay these insider threat folks, or they're just not paying them at all. I don't know, but the one that's being publicized for donations and for payments is not a bilateral communication by any means. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one really turns out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So now that we understand our operator, let's turn our attention to the Okta attack, which is what the stream is supposed to be all about. So really quick, I mentioned this on First Things First, but if you're just showing up here right now, Okta is a massive widely adopted identity and access management solution that basically allows federated authentication, meaning you can use your company's username and password that you would use to log into your Windows machine at your desk to log into Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox or Netflix or whatever solutions that your organization needs to use. You can leverage Okta to kind of allow you to use that identity and password to authenticate to these different devices, which on the surface is brilliant from an information security perspective, because now you don't have Carl having 30 different usernames and passwords, trying to remember them all, using the same password everywhere. When Carl leaves, and this is a major problem at many organizations, when Carl leaves, you terminate Carl's access to his Windows machine, but you don't terminate all the access to the OneDrive, the Google Drive, because you have all these different accounts and no one's really administering them. And that access persists and it's cloud-based, so anyone can use it from anywhere. Mm-hmm. So Okta is a great solution at handling that. Now, LAPSUS has apparently breached Okta. Now, according to the official Okta website, right? So this is from the Okta CEO or CISO or whatever. They're saying here that only, and hopefully you guys can read that on stream. It says only 2.5% of customers were impacted. Right now, their stock took a 6% dip on this news, but they're saying 2.5%. Was affected, and that their Okta service is fully operational, so there's nothing to worry about. We're investigating. Couple things. One, this just came out, right? But the breach, as far as I can tell, Eric, the breach occurred in January of 2022. So this breach has been known by Okta for 2 months at least, and there has been some speculation that part of LAPSUS's ability to take down these massive whale targets is because they've gotten into Okta in January and are able to leverage that. I don't know how true that is, because I don't know why Microsoft would be using Okta, frankly. But
we'll dive into
go ahead.
All right, so we'll dive into Okta first. We can dive into Microsoft if you want to as well. But Okta, they do have multiple platforms. For those who don't know, who may be on this or watching, they're much like Duo that's owned by Cisco. So you have a single sign-on that you can do with your third-party authenticator, like you said, Microsoft, G Suite, your local domain, to provide that single sign-on capability with all of your third-party applications, including your local workstation. But they also have their own native SSO. So you can put together a web page for your users to be able to single sign on to these third-party applications, like Lee said, all zero exactly. So it's to make things easier for your end users to be able to integrate and do, third-party applications. So what it looks like in some of the images that I was seeing coming over in the feed, there was the only thing that I think is being tied to Cloudflare right now is there's one image inside of Okta that looks like it's diving into a Cloudflare portal. Now, it does not look like a typical management portal from my experience with Cloudflare anyway. I'm not sure if it's some sort of custom API or anything like that, but it doesn't look like Cloudflare themselves have gotten breached. But Okta, from what I'm looking at, what LAPSUS has talked about, they did pay off somebody at Okta, supposedly a senior engineer at Okta, to get access into their information and be able to start leaking all that information. Now, as of, let's see, what was it? 8:41 Eastern. It looks like Okta has sold, or LAPSUS has sold that data over to Genesis Market. All right. So yeah, if you to talk about that, go one more. Keep going. Let's see. It should have been the third one, I believe. Yep, there it is. So you got the Cloudflare right there, that image of Cloudflare. So, but in the URL, it is still okta.com. So I'm not sure if that is a third-party API for management into a Cloudflare instance, or what exactly this is. So it looks like maybe a single an SSO built into Okta. Again, a lot of people seen that Cloudflare and immediately thought that, oh crap, Cloudflare has been popped, they've been breached, they're part of this whole thing. And it, on the surface, it doesn't look like that, right? So
And you
it's
can
interesting.
see this image is posted by LAPSUS Group, right? So this is part of their evidence to show that they do have the goods. And you'll notice that the user they're logged into is called super user. Now, whether or not that's superimposed or not, I mean, it's kind of interesting to name the account super user, but presumably it's super user access, right? Of whatever this individual account has access to.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Exactly. So it's going to be interesting, like I said, to see what this thing pans out to be, right? So, um, Black Knight T4, now that they sell the data, they aren't realizing the only copy of just a version. Yeah, but they're not going. They don't care. They're financially motivated, right? If I understand this question correctly, they are, just trying to sell off information, just like anybody who. I mean, think back about your Equifax or your credit card breaches, or even the Target breach, right? It's all about how quickly you can capitalize on the information that you have for maximal profitability.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So, I mean, okay, so we've talked about what happened. What is the impact now? Let's talk about impact. So, if you are using Okta as your solution, your federated authentication solution, I would argue, and I did watch Black Hills Information Security did a stream yesterday with John Strand and Mick Douglas on this topic as well, which is helping inform my opinion. But if you are using Okta, I don't think this is a rip out and worry about you
no.
need to replace this solution, right? I think multi-factor authentication is a critically important control in any information security program. Like if I show up as CISO day one, I'm asking, do we have multi-factor on our cloud external systems? And if we don't, that's a priority. I don't even need to build a program. I need that fixed. Having said that, it's not a silver bullet. It's not it's not a cure-all elixir that if we have it, we're good to go. It is just another control in the, framework of controls that we're implementing. It's an important one and it has massive value, but it is not it's not one control to rule them all, to pull a Lord of the Rings reference. So I think if you are using Okta, that it would be foolish to rip it out and try to replace it, because I think you would be actually exposing yourself to increased risk in that interim period where you don't have multi-factor. And then B, like, dude, Okta, like, just from a pure business perspective, guys, like a lot of us as practitioners don't think about this, but you think about it for a second. From a practitioner perspective, if you have bought a 3-year deal with Okta and you're in year one, there's no way they're giving you your money back. So what are you going to do? Go to the CEO or CFO and ask for another 200 grand so you can implement Duo? They're going to tell you no, right? So,
Yep.
or show me some tangible evidence that we are at risk of this. Make the case for me. So Okta, I would say you don't, like, from an impact perspective, stay abreast of this. It's a very important control. So you really should be aware of what's going on. Brian Peak shared that Okta's doing a webinar at 11 to help talk about this, probably give a little bit more understanding on what is impacted and how it was impacted. But I think this is definitely I don't want to call it shields up, but turn up the level of auditing, the level of awareness, the level of where is access coming in? How are those Okta authentications happening? And then, take action if something is a little bit strange, right? So this isn't a burn the whole damn thing down. This is turn it up a little bit and be a little bit more aware of what's going on in your environment.
Yeah, I'm one of
Eric,
the
thoughts?
first people in the world that will run around and be like, "My hair's on fire! My hair's on fire! Burn it all down!" Right? But you said it. I talk about this all the time. If you're not logging it, you don't know it, right? So if you're not logging your Duo, your Microsoft 365, your G Suite, your Okta, any of these things, if you're not logging it, I know a lot of people get overburdened by alert fatigue and logging and not knowing how to log. There's plenty of companies out there, shameless plug, even including myself, but Black Hills, we both love those guys. There's other companies that are out there, find somebody that you can partner with to start ingesting your logs and alerting you if you don't have the internal team to do it. Trust me, I know we get burned out a lot. We have to do a lot of rotations and stuff like that. So, we understand that this thing is, but you've got to do it. You've got to start ingesting your logs. You've got to look for any of this weird crap that's going on.
Yeah. You know what? That brings an interesting question that I wanted to talk to you about, Eric. So yesterday on the Black Hills stream, they talked about getting the logs from Okta. And so when I think of logs, guys, I think of my endpoints. I think of my Active Directory. I think of my Azure instance and the logs that are happening there, controlling the authentication and what things are being accessed to. Where is the user authenticating from, like geographically, of my environment. Eric, as far as getting access to audit logs of these, like Okta in this case, right? How does that work? How do I get logs from Okta? Is that even available? Is that a thing?
Yeah, we could definitely post it in the chat or whatever. I think I sent it over to you in Discord, but there's several Yara roles that are available.
Oh, yeah.
So you can start ingesting all that type of data. And you're going to use a third-party application like Sumo Logic or FortiSIM or anybody. I mean, when it comes to this, I'm kind of vendor agnostic, if you will. So definitely find a platform that works for you and, start ingesting your logs. A lot of times you'll have a free trial of 30 days. Start ingesting those logs to see how that platform works. If it doesn't work for you, then find another one. All right. Not all the tools have a direct API. Some of them will do a dump into an S3 bucket, and then you got to take Sumo or Humio or FortiSIM and pull from that S3 bucket to bring it in. So yeah, there's some of the chats. So I think there's 2 of them that I sent over to you yesterday.
Yep.
Perfect.
So I'm bringing them in right now, and I'm just going to show them really quickly. This is the Sigma rules on GitHub. You could see Fantinus is the one who did it. All these, these YAMLs right here, Sigma rules. So you could see it's written in that Sigma language, I guess, if you want to call it, very appropriately written, or YAML. So it's just looking. I mean, it's pretty basic, guys. API token create, right? I mean, it's not rocket science what they're doing here, but putting them in makes sense. So, and Eric, you may have mentioned this, but like, as far as ingesting these rules, like I can put these Sigma rules in my SIM and look for them. But how am I getting the logs from Okta, right? Is that something you have to turn on and have them push the logs to you?
It's an API GET request.
Okay.
So you'll set up the API keys, and your like I said, Sumo Logic or Humio or whatever will pull from Sigma via that API call.
Perfect. And here are these rules for detection engines, right? Like, I guess, I don't know if you would put this into an EDR or not.
You could modify it. So like folks who have SentinelOne or CrowdStrike, they do have the Splunk back end. So you can modify this a little bit to start ingesting it into your own and see if that's happening. Even though I don't think SentinelOne will be a good use case, because those are mostly endpoint detection YAR rules, but you could take from a high level, you could take that stuff. But just look for this stuff. Look for anomalies. And if you're not like I said, in the IT world, when your owner or the boss will come and yell at you, like, look, if it's not logged, it never happened.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing. If you're not logging it, you're not going to be able to search for it. So.
Yeah. And it really is worth pointing out, as you mentioned, Eric, like, guys, if you are not ingesting logs from your third-party providers that are providing some type of service that's like infrastructure-based, like authentication or resiliency or something like that, that's step one. Start pulling those logs. Figure out how to make those API GET calls and bring those in. That doesn't even introduce the challenge of like, where do you store the logs? Do you have enough hard drive space to store the logs, et cetera? Do you have enough money if you're pushing them to like a Splunk instance? But at the end of the day, and I flipped out about this in First Things First. Like, if now is when you're deciding to like stand up SecOps and stuff like that, you're kind of way behind the eight ball, not just a little behind the eight ball. You might even want to bring in a third-party provider like a Barricade Cyber Solutions or anyone who has experience with incident response, like almost like proactive incident response, to be like, okay, like tell me what, if we got breached today, what would you ask to do? And I know the first thing you would ask for is, where are the logs? So like, let's get the logs in place. How do I do that? Like, help me, right? So I think that's really the next steps, per this graphic we made. The next steps really depend on what your current state is of your security program. And then I'd argue what industry you're in, also how large you are. Eric, here's a question for you.
Sure.
If you're a smaller player, right, $750 million manufacturing company, right, are you worried about LAPSUS? Because their targets have been Fortune 50 companies. So is it head in the sand because we're too small to get hit, or what do you think?
I think that it's a really double sword. So, they are targeting the larger enterprises, but they are open to discussions for anybody, manufacturing especially, right? So we've seen threat actors going after the Volvo chain and some of the other manufacturing that's been heavily targeted by ransomwares groups in the past several weeks. So there's a lot of intellectual property inside of the manufacturing industry. So yeah, definitely you need to start looking at everybody. As much as I hate to say, be a conspiracy theorist, but if you're in this industry, yeah, you're paranoid. You need to be a conspiracy theorist, and one has a can consume.
Yeah,
Awesome,
I agree.
awesome, Doug.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Awesome, good information.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I appreciate that. That is good to know. We are seeing a lot of the EDR solution providers provide native integration for a lot of the larger platforms. You also see it with like O365, AWS. You see a lot of that kind of native integration.
A follow-up question for
So
Doug, if he can answer this one. Doug, I know SentinelOne has, their core and their complete, and then you have to get, I think it's Vigilant or Vigilance or whatever for their full EDR and stuff. Do you have to have that to ingest Okta? Again, I know SentinelOne a little bit, but I'm not very versed, so maybe he can be able to answer that one. And I do like to do question and answers, but Purple Otter, at what size are you most at risk for ransomware? Purple, you know what? We see a single CPA firms getting hit with ransomware. Knowing,
you posted on Discord the other day. I looked it up. There was a 3-person law firm out of Connecticut that got hit.
Yeah. The whole QNAP and Synology breaches with QLocker not too long ago, those are home devices for the most part, right? So everybody's susceptible. If they think they can get money from you, they're going to. Think of the IRS scams that, you need to go buy a bunch of Amazon gift cards to satisfy the IRS.
Yeah, absolutely. So LAPSUS, big player on the stage. This Okta breach. Another thing, just to kind of round it out, because we're getting close on time here. Another thing that Black Hills pointed out that I thought was interesting, and I really had to reflect on it, and I still haven't come to my conclusion. With that super user screenshot, they were talking about, really this is about the one compromised endpoint. This isn't Okta compromised as an overall complete organization, which lowers the impact, if you will, the impact value of that. My initial thought is, and I respect the crap out of John Strand and Mick Douglas, but my initial thought was like, yeah, it's one endpoint, but it's a user that is quote unquote super user that should have access to sensitive resources. So it seems not a far reach that they would be able to pivot through resources of the organization and be able to get access to those particular things. So even though it's one compromised endpoint, I feel like the risk is still greater than one compromised endpoint. Any thoughts from your experience, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, the endpoint is very loose, so it's really the identity that was compromised. Because the guy, I say guy, I'm assuming it's a gentleman, but the individual, if you will, they sold their access to LAPSUS, and LAPSUS says it was a senior engineer that got got the creds for, and for the MFA, because they did do a SIM swap, so that way they had persistence access for that account. So hopefully they found out who that is, and that MFer is going to spend a lot of time in jail, because that's just, bullcrap. And to touch on Microsoft for 1 second, Microsoft has come out and said it was another user that was compromised with the acquisition. Scholar, they became the
Yeah, and
okay.
while you're reading that, Eric, like I agree 100%. Like these individuals that are getting wooed by LAPSUS to sell their internal access, it seems so easy to be like, hey, we'll give you 50 grand. All you do is give us our username and password and walk away, or go grab a bathroom break. And when you come back, that's it. It seems so easy, but like, I feel like these end users have no clue that there's logs. Like you are basically the patsy. You will be discovered because it's your account that's all over this. And I mean, it's a pretty easy reach to just look at your, bank account, right? Which you might say, hey, privacy, well, that's my bank account. But yeah, when you're the target of an investigation, they'll get access to your financials. And, especially if you don't know a damn thing about like cryptocurrency or anything like that, you're not going to be practicing great OPSEC. So you will be discovered, you will be held accountable, and it will suck. And I guarantee you there's going to be a big splashy martyr type story at some point here in the next couple months of someone who sold their access and is left holding the bag, if you will.
Yeah. So, as of last night, LAPSUS said that they're going on a vacation. So even though they do have a couple of folks that are in the pipeline, it'll be interesting to see how much noise we're actually hear from them over the next couple of weeks. I imagine they're they've made enough noise, and we've seen, with like ReEvil hitting, Coastal Pipeline, you make too much noise and you're going to start getting some major 3-letter agencies coming after you. So this may be just their way of cooling the atmosphere down a little bit before they have too much trouble on their hands.
Well, so let me ask you this, because Eric, I know you go into the dark web quite a bit. You're very nice about posting certain things on social media regarding that. As far as these agencies to be able to communicate, not intimidate, but to communicate with the LAPSUS threat actors, is it fairly easy for them to, for like, let's just say CIA, like for lack of a better term, is it easy for them to flex and indicate to LAPSUS that they need to cool down, or else they're going to, basically invite trouble?
Oh yeah, I mean it's simple. I mean they're communicating openly on Telegram. So, and literally all you got to do is have a cell phone number and you've got a Telegram account. So, and there's many platforms that you can make, free cell phone numbers and stuff just to get that one-time 2FA code to authenticate yourself and have that. So, they could easily obfuscate themselves very easily on that. So,
yeah, I wish SIM so I don't want to go too far down the road, but obviously SIM swapping is part of how they're executing this attack. It infuriates me that you can do SIM swapping so easily, and unfortunately, I feel like if you'd said like, oh, so like in person, you have to be in person, but when you have compromised individuals at the telecarrier who are willing to do it no matter what, there is no control you can implement to prevent that SIM swapping from occurring.
Oh yeah, and that's a little bit of a different topic. So I mean, this just stay a little bit on point. Okta was a user, so that user, I think it was in the questions way in the beginning. So don't definitely go in there. But people were saying that how do they know? How does the person know they're going to get paid? They are criminals after all. A lot of times, it's not been proven with LAPSUS, but a lot of these threat actors that do insider threats, they will give them a little fraction of the money. So typically the insider person sends some images, says, hey, this is what I have access to, things of that nature. They give a quote unquote down deposit, get that access, and supposedly they're supposed to get the rest of the money once they've done what they've done. So if you have an insider threat that is willing to work with the hackers, of course they're going to let you SIM swap. They don't care. It's like, yeah, here's my account number. Here's, I'm authorizing this stuff. But yeah, to the point we have seen many cases. Even there was a story not too long ago on, I believe it was Darknet Diaries, where they were doing a lot of SIM swapping because they were stealing iPads and stuff out of display centers. So
Dirty
It's
Comms. It was
yeah.
episode called Dirty Comms. Very good episode. It just came out a couple weeks ago. I listened to it on my 6-hour drive this weekend. Yeah, excellent. Definitely check out Darknet Diaries. All right, Eric, we're about 35 minutes here. Let's drop final thoughts on what folks may want to know or predictions or anything like that. Final thoughts.
Log, log, log. If you need help logging, find somebody to help you.
Yeah. Simple as that. Yeah. Take
Yeah.
advantage. We dropped links in chat. There are Sigma rules. There are detections that are out there. Take advantage of it. Like I said, I don't think you need to rip Okta out of place. But twofold. One, spend some time putting these rules in your security operations tools, right? In your SIMs, in your EDRs. Validate that they're working correctly, right? And then make sure that they notify you or alert you or send an email or text message or webhook or whatever. Just don't just copy paste it into your SIM and then go to lunch, right? Like validate that it's actually working, right? That's important. A lot of people don't do that for some reason. Secondly, I don't want to say like start walking around and like shaking down Carl and being like, I know you're going to sell your access, buddy. Like, but maybe educate your end users. I don't want to say scare them, okay? But security awareness is incredibly valuable at curbing and adjusting end user behavior. If you make them aware that threat actors are offering money in order to give up their access, that might seem appealing, but then tell them what the impact is. Listen, hey guys, like they're offering a lot of money, but just be aware that these people are, their account is being tied to these crimes essentially, and they're being held accountable. Don't say you will be thrown in jail, Carl, but use some type of straw man argument or point to some external entity that did this and what the impact was. You can find it with Google. And by showing the downstream effects of making that decision by giving up your access, you can help curb behavior, because I'm telling you, people don't think. They're like, oh, money. Yes. Like, let's go. But if you go down the road and show them that there will be negative consequences that they absolutely do not want to deal with, you will, if they're approached, they'll have that in their mind and they'll make the decision, hopefully, to not go forward with that, which will ultimately help protect your own organization from compromise, right?
Well, to talk about this, I mean, you know me, I'm full ADHD, so I could talk for the next 10 hours if you really want to. But what is seriously, when you look at LAPSUS, what is going to be the root cause of being brought in onto a LAPSUS data breach? What's going to cause that person to be that insider threat and sell that information? Most of the time, there's clear signs, troubled individuals inside of your organizations, people who are not happy, people who want to give the proverbial middle finger to the boss, people who are, I don't want to, be super negative, but people who are on their way out, their last 2 weeks, like, F it, I don't care,
Yeah.
So, I mean, take some time and think about if you're running an organization, you're in management, are there people not happy in your organization? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, just talking out loud, maybe have a freaking smoke cookout for lunch this week. Bring a barbecue, somebody host a barbecue pit in your friggin' driveway, and everybody gets the rest of the day off. Or I don't know, but these people are not happy, clearly.
Exactly. And that's really incumbent. We're getting into a bigger topic here, but that's really incumbent on leadership looking around and actually addressing the human resources. A lot of times people, especially in capitalistic America, will just drive the crap out of their staff because they're seen as a human resource, and that's it. And you really do need to be mindful of, kind of read the room, if you will. Have a vibe of what's going on in your organization, and you can't curb it all. But you're right, Eric. I mean, if your team's been going nonstop, give them a Friday off, right? One day isn't going to break your organization, right? Give them a random Friday off, or, actually, another thing that I heard, Gary Vaynerchuk, right? A lot of people know this guy. He's a big deal. He actually spoke about this, and I found it fascinating. This was like maybe 6 months ago I heard this. He said, you know what? like throwing someone an extra 10% salary, that might not be it. Maybe I date a girl who lives 4 hours away. And you know what? Every other Friday off would be incredibly valuable to me because I could leave Thursday and spend a 3-day weekend with someone that I care about. 10% more salary isn't going to do anything for me. That's
Mhm.
not a motivator, right? So it's not as simple as just like have a day off, check the box, and feel like you've done a great leadership thing. Like, be mindful of what is important to the individuals and how you can make their experience, their work experience, at least more enjoyable, to the fact where they're not going to like burn your organization down, to Eric's point, right? So, and it could be other factors too, right? People could have gambling issues, financial struggles, someone's
Mhm.
getting divorced, and all of a sudden they're strapped for cash, maybe opioid addiction, et cetera, et cetera. But hopefully those things kind of start to present themselves as well. But insider threats is a tough thing to address because it's like,
It's
oh, we're all a family here except Carl. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough. It's tough when you deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just simply just have a meeting for all the Carls. Just do a blanket company announcement. It's like, look, not naming anybody or whatever, but we see some morale going down a little bit, and we're a little concerned.
Yeah.
We're going to put, fill out a piece of paper or a Google form or Microsoft form or whatever, or my door is open. If you're not happy about anything, bring it to my attention and we can address it. And that's why you can figure out, hey, my girlfriend lives 4 hours away. You can start
Hmm.
addressing some of those situations. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes work, right? It's not,
it does.
it's not, it's not easy. It takes work, but that's supposed to be your thing. We got one guy who likes Carl, Matt Mears, friend of the show. Nice to see you, Matt.
All right, we need to
Um,
flag him because we already know Carl's trouble. And if he likes Carl, then
yeah, he could be the insider threat. Matt Mears is the insider threat. Let's turn on him. Um,
breaking news.
okay. Yeah. All right. So LAPSUS. Okay. Just to kind of bring this whole breach
Yeah.
analysis down, we understand what LAPSUS is. They did say they're taking a vacation, but like every other, like every other group that takes a vacation, they have a lot of brand equity right now. So I almost wonder if it would, like, a lot of these guys will rebrand themselves, right? Like
Mhm.
Dark Side became Black Matter, became whatever they are now. And Lapsus has brand equity, but I could see them spinning up as a different entity, right? Like, the FUBAR threat
Yep.
actor gang, in order to just kind of separate themselves. But with how hot and how heavy they've been coming in, I don't know if they would actually rebrand.
Not yet.
So yeah.
There's not enough heat on them to do that. They've got a good thing going on their side of the fence. Again, I'm not trying to condone what they're doing, but
Yeah.
they're as a model, they have a good thing going, right? So, they're not going to try to rebrand and then come up with a new names like, oh yeah, we're really LAPSUS over here and going through that whole verification. Anybody who does sales, they know you got to go through that process of building trust.
Hmm.
They're not going to go through that process right now. There's no benefit to them.
Yeah. I do love Chad Hernandez's comment that Lapsus is taking our advice to treat their staff and affiliates with care and giving them this time off for for their hard work these last 3 months. Good point, Chad. Very funny. So,
Hacking is hard
all right.
work.
So we talked about what it is, what the impact is. So I guess we'll just see as it goes. But again, Okta is doing a webinar at 11 a.m. Brian dropped it in chat. So if you are interested, if you use Okta, it's a no-brainer that you should attend that webinar and get a bit more information. You should be in contact with your VAR or your representative from Okta to get more information and make sure that you're good. Put your SecOps tools to work. Use these free Sigma rules, these free detections, to make sure that you're detecting these things, and educate your end user staff. I feel like those are really the next steps that you could take that would be prudent towards addressing this particular risk.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Fire up that trigger, y'all. Let's do some cooking and let's have some fun and try to take care of our people.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it, Eric. I'll give you, I know I said final thoughts, but I'm about to click the end show button. So any final thoughts before we say? And thank you, everybody. We were at 96 people. Looks like YouTube is flaking out a bit, but
Yeah.
96 people are a little bit more informed right now because of this. So thank you for your time, Eric. And thank you all of you for being in chat and sharing your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll just do a shameless plug if you don't mind. So if
Nope.
you don't have anybody, and you want to talk to somebody, go to barricadecyber.com. Literally, my calendar is on the homepage. Find what time. I will happily sit down and talk with you folks on a Zoom call and try to help out, even if it's not with us, if it's with somebody else. I would rather be a broker to you getting more secure, even if it's not directly impacting me. But I want to be a help. Let's have a conversation. Let's see how we can make your organization a little bit stronger today.
Yep. And this is your website, right, Eric? Right here.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So you can just go to barricadecyber.com.
Literally, just scroll down just a little bit, and you'll see my calendar. I'm very, very accessible, even on Saturdays.
Yeah, look at this. Look at this. You could meet with Eric at 11:30 today, or grab lunch with him. Either way, this is a really cool feature, Eric. Very nice.
Thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, of course. So thank you, Eric Taylor, for being with us. Thank you, chat, for being with us. And guys, what's today? Wednesday, March 23rd. So tomorrow, Thursday, first things first, 10 a.m. standard issue. It's Stream Thursday, Cyber Stream Thursday. So there's a lot of hot action going on. And Eric and I haven't talked about this already, but if this story continues to evolve, we'll probably jump on another kind of deep dive meeting and discuss what we know and what you guys need to know in order to be more secure and protected in your org. Are you cool with that, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just throw rocks over at your house real quick since we're pretty much in the same neighborhood. So
Exactly. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.
Take care, everybody.